We have maybe some ads, we have some sort of an SEO, and it's going to work. Maybe it will. The more you end up building something which is cutting edge, the more you end up building something which has not been built before, the more you are playing at the cusp of what technological innovation is. When I look back on everything I have gone through as a founder in my life, I think there would be a few things I would immediately change. And this is partly aimed at all of my founder friends I know building back in India right now, and also people in the US who are building from different cities. There's a bunch of learning that has come the hard way. And one of the most important ones is the importance of on-ground presence. As a founder, when you are just thinking, oh, we have a product, we have a team that's going to market it, we have maybe some ads, we have some sort of an SEO, and it's going to work, maybe it will. The more you end up building something which is cutting edge, the more you end up building something which has not been built before, the more you are playing at the cusp of what technological innovation is, the more you're going to deal with ambiguity in the industry. Believe it or not, decision makers also are equally confused. And when you're confused or when you're scared, you operate from an angle of self-defense. Like, you don't just make bold decisions. Right now, the market timing is bad. Everything is very gloomy. People are being laid off all across. Everyone is trying to cut costs. And then there is AI. And by default, the first response is, okay, I'm going to implement AI. But with that, the second lens or the second statement that people also, probably they don't word it out, they also go in and say, I'm going to implement AI in a way that it will help me save more money or it will help me grow faster. And when I was not in the Bay Area, and I talk about this from back in my career, when even in the early days of like me being a founder or whenever I'm not on the ground, there's so much of gap in actually grasping what really needed, how decisions are being made, right from how you dress up as a person. And it may look very stupid today, and it looked stupid to me when I was there. But I think out of all the states in the US, in Texas, if you're trying to meet a decision maker, you are maybe 2x more likely to be successful if you choose to meet them in person than choosing to meet over Zoom. And then here I was, last 2 weeks were about Databricks and Snowflake and the Summit and all of these people building tools. Somewhere you'd end up thinking, oh, my tool needs to have the most different positioning, or my tool needs to have a very different narrative. And when you're actually spending time on the ground, oh, there's these companies that are all probably exactly trying to do the same thing. It's not like their core piece of technology is very different, but how they're positioning themselves, the kind of niche that they're chosen, the kind of feedback cycle that they are in, it's probably much more faster than what you have if you're not in the US. So my first recommendation to everyone out there is to just pack your bags, don't move if you don't want to, but come here and stay here for 6 months at a stretch, and you'd start seeing the differences. It's so strange. Today, I think I have maybe 7 events I have RSVP'd to, and I don't know, I'll probably go to a couple of them. Yesterday, I met someone super interesting who is head of sales in a company I had never heard of. When I checked their revenue, it's a 10 billion plus revenue. And I was like, oh, wow, what do you do? And he's now, I'm just advising startups. And then he starts talking about what my venture is, and he's like tons of opinions on it. Oh, I was selling to energy companies at one point of time, and this is how I was able to crack that narrative. Out of the blue, it was a sound experience, like an event which I honestly didn't expect to network on. I was actually just in my running clothes and chilling around at the event thinking that, okay, I'm done with the day. And then I run into this person, and it probably was the most fruitful conversation I had the whole day. And then he's opened up doors to 5 other people who are selling actively an AI plus data product. But there was no way I would have run into this person had I been sitting back in India. That was the second thing. You run into really good people. You see what their positioning is. You see who's coming to their booth. And this who's coming to their booth, like even in Snowflake and Data, the two summits that I've been talking about again and again, when you are trying to target a product, you're thinking of very conventional personas. Oh, I'm trying to sell a data product. It has to be a head of analytics, or it has to be a head of decision sciences or someone like that. And then I realized here that out of all the food brands, that we're looking at, there's someone who is in charge of consumer relations and media. And you'd never expect media, because when you're trying to work on a data product, you don't expect people who deal with media. And consumer relations and media, those personas were the folks who were the most involved in adopting AI products. So that became the third lens of, oh my God, this is maybe we have left a bunch of people in these orgs. And then you keep wondering, oh, we send them a message, they're not actually responding to. Problem is, when people are confused, you need to see them often. If I meet a random company out of the blue today, even if it's a cold call or a warm call, doesn't matter, they're going to be confused after meeting you, because it's not your product, it's in general the time and the industry and the domain you've chosen to be in and the kind of technological shift you're witnessing all around. But when you actually start seeing them again and again, and you don't have to actively see them, you just keep running into them at similar events, there are like these, the serendipity just kicks in and you start seeing a lot of advantage happen. We're trying to go after automobile companies. Now, automobile companies have their base in Detroit, and we are trying to work with some energy companies as well. They have their base in a place like Houston. And unless you are on the ground in these places, you would probably not see these execs even opening emails or spending time on these platforms like LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you think your marketing is just going to work. To a large extent, getting a pulse of who else is operating, understanding the cultural nuances of how you need to appear yourself, how you need to present yourselves, what you need to dress like, what you need to speak, what you need to do. It all starts becoming much more clear when you are on the ground here. And it's a massive problem, because I know there's a big narrative of build from India right now, and that's cool. There's so many people building stuff, but the feedback cycle in US is super on point. You will see someone look at your product and go on and say, this is BS, I'm not going to buy it. Or they're just going to come and say, hey, this is super cool, tell me more about why this does this. As opposed to in eastern parts of the world, you have this tendency of people being too friendly with you. When you go on and tell them a product, even if they don't like it, they're going to go on and say, this is super cool, all the best. And then if you can't read between the lines of what that super cool means, or for that matter, even in the US, when someone goes and says, oh, sounds like a great idea, let's catch up again, but they're not initiating booking a meeting again, chances are that they're actually not that interested, and they're just saying it to be sweet to you on your face and so on. There are like tons of nuances, cultural nuances of like where you are transactional, where you are relational. I have seen very established leaders to these lunches and dinners in the US take notes of who they met. So there's a decision maker, but they met the daughter of the decision maker, who is a 3-year-old girl. And then they met the son of a decision maker, who's a 7-year-old boy who likes something, Star Wars or something like that. And they're taking these notes, and it's so relational on that aspect. You connect with people. So when we meet people here, for example, in Austin, talking just about real estate prices and how North Austin and South Austin and what's happening in domain and so on, those have been like conversations that people remember you for. Even when you are at a conference, the last thing you want to do is just go on and say, hey, we are doing this product, because guess what? 100 other people are pitching them the same thing every second hour, and you want them to remember you in some way. So there are like these nuances of how the interpersonal dynamics really work in your favor when you're a founder, which is not very apparent if you're not building with the customers. Now, the question is, do we have to have a relational dynamic even when we are selling a technical product, even if we are selling a very high-tech thing in this world where people is just the norm? It's as good as a phone call. Yes, more so if you are trying to work with mid-sized to upper enterprises. And by nature, the kind of product that we are building, it's not something that you would want a seed stage company to use, because seed stage company doesn't have that sort of a maturity where they have data complexities and multiple data platforms. And you think about also a problem existing where you have to marry data from multiple sources. The minute you start talking to someone who's 500 employees or more, decisions are still largely relational when you are building something which is a little evolving in nature. It is way more important to have customer testimonials. No one talks about it, but I think more and more founders need to just focus ruthlessly on delivering case studies. And then the whole aspect of what do you say when you are in a meeting room with someone that actually gets them to trust you. Because for a large part of my life, I was of the opinion that, oh, maybe there's something wrong with us, or maybe there's something wrong with how we are narrating this, or maybe you come back with some sort of an excuse on why you were just badly placed. Like I've seen founders go in and say the market is so bad, people are not willing to pay for us. It's rarely that, like, the market is bad, but there's some company which probably has the exact same messaging as you, which is going and getting more and more revenue. They're doing definitely something different than you. And what that difference is what's very important for you to crack down. So all in favor of go on and do the first call, maybe remotely. But if you are an early stage company, you do not have a name to yourself, being on the ground is very important. Building relationships is very important. Showing your face is very important. Learning the vocabulary, learning the style, learning the culture is very important. It's a real thing. Otherwise, you would end up. And you need to be very strategic about everything. When you're going to an event, don't just show up and hope you're going to meet people. It's so interesting. A year back, I think like I had never paid much attention to it, and I was at this event. The way you would expect, so folks in India, they dress up very clearly in a jeans and a t-shirt or a shirt, and then right. I was well dressed. I was going around confidently, and someone came and said, "Vikram, you do not look like an American. And if you're going and talking to someone who you're hoping is going to pay you a six-figure number eventually, that's not going to happen the way you are going to do it right now. So you need to change these things. Like when you call someone up on a phone, cold calls, you need to have a cultural. You need to know the jokes. You need to know the nuances of what is to be said in that short period of time, so that you are actually able to get something out of it from their end as well. It's maybe a 45-second call, but if you just start with a joke about baseball, chances are that you'd connect more. Chances are that you'd make them laugh. Chances are that you'd make them remember. And that is way less emphasized today in the entrepreneurial journey. People are like, build a really good product for sure, market your product well for sure, but the first couple of $1 billion that you are going to get as a founder has to be by yourself. And if your market is in the US, you better spend 6 months here. You go back if you have to, that's okay. But it's very important. Otherwise, you would not get answers to these questions. Here in San Francisco, I see an event for retail folks exclusively. I can't even get into that event because it's only for people who are running a retail chain, who have maybe 5-store locations somewhere in the US. But think of the quality of conversations that are happening there. If you're trying to build a retail product, you just go to that event. You'd probably come back with all sorts of answers on whether you should be building what you're building or not. There's a conference on airline. There's a conference on energy companies, power grid companies. There's a seafood industry event, which is like everyone who is a seafood supplier. You don't even know these things exist. And I think it's just an unfortunate bubble that we are living in. So a lot of founders, I would encourage whoever is not in the US to strongly actually think about building this from the US. And honestly, if you've never been to the US, that's even more important. I have spent half of my life professionally working with people who are based out of US. I was always frequently traveling, and it still took me a good half of my entrepreneurial journey to understand that this is a big mistake. If you're interested in Crunchit and everything we are doing at Crunchit.ai, please click on one of these links below, and it will just take you to a place where you'll have to fill up some details and then get us scheduled to speak to each other. I hope to see you there.